A lot of people in the room here, but there's a lot of people, I think, tuning in online right now. Hello and a warm welcome to Developing Dylan Live, which is organised by Literature Wales and supported by Dylan Ed educational programme, Swansea University and BBC Wales. Welcome to our Dylan Thomas workshop. I'm Dan Anthony, and with me today we have a school from Swansea, Morriston Comprehensive School, have come along here, and I think, which class was it again?
7I.
7I are with us for the afternoon. They're also joined by some students from Swansea University Creative Writing Department. They're just probably maybe a little bit out of vision if you're watching online, but they will be sweeping through the room throughout the day with their ingenious suggestions as to how to write better stuff. We've also got with us a really wonderful special guest, Dylan Thomas's granddaughter, Hannah Ellis, who has been travelling the UK as part of the Dylan Thomas 100th birthday celebrations. That was last year. And who's also venturing on a career writing children's books of her own. Please give a big welcome to Hannah Ellis. Thank you very much. There's just one more thing I want to say. I just want to outline a little bit so that everybody in the room knows of what we're doing, but also everybody who's viewing on the screens. It's very simple. We're going to start off, I hope, with a few questions for Hannah, who can bring some light on quite an enigmatic but important poet, Dylan Thomas. After that, we're going to watch a very, very famous, sort of iconic, if you like, piece of work by Dylan Thomas. And then finally, because actually in this room, many of us are writers themselves, we're going to see if we can come up with some new work of our own, based on the ideas first explored by Dylan Thomas. Our first question I just wanted to ask you, because you are Dylan's granddaughter, and of course I can remember my grandparents. I just wanted to ask, first of all, do you remember Dylan?
No, I don't. He died 25 years before I was born. And so, no, I don't remember him at all. So,
well, in a sense, how did you get to hear about Dylan? Or how did you get to find out?
Well, like all of you, if you've got grandparents, I didn't actually have any grandparents when I was born. All of them had died. So he was just a granddad. He wasn't, to everyone else, he's Dylan Thomas, he's a poet, he's a writer. But to me, he was my granddad. So I wanted to know all about, I sort of had all these dreams of what it would be like if he was still alive, and whether he'd read me stories or whether he'd take me out on outings and things like that. So I think I just thought of him as a granddad.
But did you know that he was famous?
Not when I was very young, because there were just photos around the house, and then there were books on the shelves. But then as I got older, you would sometimes hear people say, "Oh, do you know who her granddad is?" So I sort of started to get an idea, but not until probably I was about 9 or 10.
Okay. So when you were young, I'm just trying to get this picture of what it was like in your house where you grew up. I mean, Dylan Thomas, we all know, grew up around here in Swansea. Where did you actually grow up?
I grew up in London.
Oh, so you were in a house in London, and the house itself, I guess, would be full, well, not full, was it full of Dylan Thomas memorabilia, if you like?
I'm not kidding you. My parents' house is like a museum. You've got photos of my grandfather's, paintings my grandmother did, books, Dylan Thomas's books all over the shelves, but not just in English, in French, in German, Italian, Arabic, every language you can imagine, all over the shelves. So yeah, it is a bit like a museum, actually. I'm
just trying to get this picture of you growing up in a house quite full of pictures of, well, he wasn't an old man, was he? He was a young man. He never got to be an old man.
Do you know he was only 39 when he died, and that's only a few years older than me, which is quite scary, really.
Did you regard him as a serious figure, or somebody who was just famous for doing something rather than one very important?
I think, like everyone else, there's this image of him being sort of this colourful, mad sort of drinking person. So I think that's how I imagined him to be. I've learnt much more actually now, and learnt that he was very different to that as I've grown older. But I think I always knew he was a writer. That was one thing. That was always sometimes quite tricky when I was at school, because some of the teachers knew that my grandfather was Dylan Thomas, so I think they thought I could write like him, which at the age of 11 I couldn't write like Dylan Thomas, unfortunately.
So did you find as you went to say high school, for example, teachers and maybe your friends and so forth just thought, well, you know, because your granddad was this really famous guy, you ought to be good at it yourself?
My friends didn't think anything about my grandfather. They didn't. Actually, a lot of my friends hadn't really heard of Dylan Thomas, but my teachers had, and I think there was certainly a feeling that I should be a good writer. Because
there's one person in the house who did know Dylan, and that's your mum.
Yeah.
And obviously you know your mum. So what did your mother tell you about what her dad was actually like?
Yes, my mum was actually only 10 when her dad died, so she was quite young. But she had a lot of strong memories. What she remembered mostly about him, I think, was because he loved writing and because he loved stories. He shared all his favourite stories with her. So they used to read fairy tales together. So they used to read things like Hansel and Gretel. But he didn't just read those stories to her, he acted them out. He did all the high voices of the witch, and he actually built the house in Hansel and Gretel, and he built it out of matches. So he really brought those stories to life. So he shared his love of books with her. He used to lie in the bath, and he used to do his characters from Under Milk Wood, and my mum would hear him reading all his characters, have sweets round the bath, and she'd hear him read all his different characters. And the thing in Under Milk Wood, there's one character that has 2 wives, and my mum just couldn't understand how there could be somebody with 2 wives, and there was a conversation, him trying to explain it to her, but I don't think she ever got it really.
Could you just say, because you know, you said Dylan Thomas is in the bath there, and he had sweets in the bath.
Yes.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Oh, he had a real sweet tooth. He loved sweets.
Okay, yeah.
He was a terrible eater. He used to eat. He liked bread soaked in milk, which I can't imagine, and he loved sweets. And he particularly liked. Have you had licorice all sorts? He liked licorice all sorts. And while he was working, he liked boiled sweets, sucking on boiled sweets, and he loved drinking. Tizer. Have you ever heard of Tizer? It's a bright orange sort of lemonade-y type drink, and it's really, really sweet. So anything sweet he loved.
One thing I was going to ask about Dylan, like that's an image of Dylan as a man who's already made it as a poet and is quite famous, and it's the kind of thing that he used to do. But of course, he got into writing when he was about the same age as the people who joined us here in the room today.
Was that was the age when his first poem was published, at the age of 11. So he would have been writing well before then.
And have you any idea why he used to write at that age? What did he like about writing, even at a young age?
I think he started, actually, before he started writing, he started reading. I think that's what he did. His dad was an English teacher, and he had a library full of books, and my grandfather just went in there and read everything, from science books, from the Bible, from fairy tales, everything he could get his hands on, and that's where he got all his ideas.
But there's a weird thing, isn't there? Because Dylan Thomas did start writing really early. People did recognise he was brilliant. I mean, I'm really surprised to hear that as well, because I'm always quite relieved to read this about Dylan, because he was really not very good at all the subjects in school, apart from one, writing stuff. So why didn't he use all that information to get good at physics or to be good at geography?
Yeah, no, he knew about lots of things. He didn't do very well at school. He just wasn't. He got a bit disengaged. I think he got a bit bored. So he did really well in English, but all the other subjects he failed at. So he came out of school. He didn't have any qualifications. So he used to meet people from universities, and he knew as much of them as them, if not more, because he'd read so much, but he didn't have a piece of paper to say that he could do these things.
Do you know anything about his first job and what he used to do around here in Swansea?
Yeah, he was a journalist. So he went around everywhere. His favourite places to go were basically the pubs by the docks, and where there was all sorts of characters and people there. He'd go underground into the pubs, and he'd see all the sailors' wives and find out all the dramas. The dirtier and grimier and more stories there were there, the more he loved it.
So in a way, he was a bit of a gossip, I suppose you could say.
Oh, he was a complete gossip. When he was older, when he lived in Larne in Carmarthenshire, he went to the pub, and before the pub opened, he went in the back room and chatted with the landlady, and she would tell him all the stories, all the gossip about all the locals, what was going on. He was a complete gossip, and he was really nosy, so he'd watch and look at everything that was going on. And I think that might be one of the things that makes people a good writer, to be really nosy.
I think perhaps one thing we should do now is take a look at a bit of a radio play that Dylan Thomas wrote. It was turned into a TV production by the BBC, and this is the most recent production of Under Milk Wood. You'll spot loads and loads of Welsh celebrities coming through it as you go along. And remember, one thing I'd like you to just think about as you're going along. You can grab a piece of paper and make a note if you want, as Dylan would have done. Think about the ghosts in particular. Can anybody remember what the first line of Under Milk Wood was? The first line. I think we might even have heard it twice. Yeah? In the beginning was the beginning. Nearly spot on. I think. What's your name, please?
I quite like your line.
Sorry? Alex. I think, Alex, that actually that's what Dylan was doing. He was playing around with that way of beginning. Dylan actually began the story to begin at the beginning, which is funnily quite easy to mix up. And I thought I'd ask our writers here to do a really, really quick bit of writing. Can you make a new beginning to a story just by changing one word in that phrase? It's still dark. We're waiting in some kind of heavenly or devilish bus stop to come back alive. And you're the ghosts of people who lived in Swansea. So if you like, who do you think you might have been when you were alive? Sitting on the bus stop there. What are you going to say to each other? Give yourself an interesting name. You're a ghost, yeah?
Nice ghosts.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh my god, what was my nickname? Sapphire. That was my street name.
Really, I really don't like interrupting people when they start writing. But can I just say it's a real pleasure to have met you all. And I'm really, really pleased to see everybody in the room starting to switch on to the idea of maybe being the new Dylan Thomas. I think the last word should go to Hannah Ellis. Thank you very much, Hannah, for coming along. And it's been a real pleasure meeting you.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I hope that this isn't actually the end for you. I hope this is the beginning. And I hope that you might be able to find some time to discover a bit more about my grandfather's writing. I hope so. But there are a few people we need to thank. In particular, I'd like to thank you guys from Morriston Comprehensive School, Literature Wales, Swansea University's Dylan Ed Education Project, and BBC Wales, because without all those people, this wouldn't have happened today. And please do keep an eye out for this recording on the Developing Dylan website that you will be able to access at www.developingdylan100.co.uk, and there'll also be a Welsh language workshop happening on Wednesday the 4th of March. All that's left for me to say is that there's going to be an International Dylan Thomas Day, and one way your school can get involved in this is by helping Martin Dawes and Anirin Caredog create Dylan's great poem. It's going to be a bilingual poem inspired by Dylan Thomas on the theme of community. Until then, it's goodbye from us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye up there. Thank you.